Priya, first of all, thank you so much for joining the podcast with me and Arwen. It's a pleasure having you here, and we've had a brief discussion before about the topics we're about to talk about, and I'm super excited to. Yeah, I'd love to, I guess, kickstart the conversation with learning more about how you fell into a people role.
Absolutely. Yeah, fell is a really good way of kind of explaining what happened. So from a really young age, my family and I had dairies growing up, so corner shops. That's the place where people went and bought their bread and milk. So from a really early age, I've literally been in the service of people. I've served customers, and I think I've always cared about customer service in some way, shape, or form. I'm born and raised in Lower Hutt, Wellington. I've spent my whole life here, apart from just a couple of years where I was in Melbourne. And then work-wise, I went to uni because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I thought that uni would help me sort that out. It did not. I just walked away with a $37,000 student loan and no idea of where I wanted to be. So straight after uni, I needed to pay my rent. So I got a job at a print design agency as a receptionist. And that's where I sort of learned about print work clients, how to manage the client relationship. And I kind of thought, oh, maybe I could do this. Like maybe I could be a project manager or an account manager or do some kind of client service. And that really kicked off the start of what's now been, gosh, to show my age, a 20 plus year career in this beautiful, wild, creative industry here in Wellington. So I became like an internal, I guess what you would call a studio or traffic type person at what used to be called back then a new media agency. So we did heaps of like museum work, touch screens, text projections. It was really exciting work. And then I became a baby project manager and an account manager there. And then I moved to an agency that really specialized in making websites. And then quite a few years into it, I just realized that I actually hate being an account manager. I hate like managing timelines, budgets, doing work reports. I hated that. But what I really liked was when they used to rope me in to help with like, oh, we're going to throw a big team event day. Pre, do you have any ideas? It was all of that stuff and the stuff that I was sort of doing in my own time that I was like, oh yeah, I really like this. And people kept talking to me about their problems and their challenges, and I'd help them out. And you kind of realize with a bit of reflection that that's the stuff that you actually want to be doing, right? I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to Melbourne. I had a really great time, too great of a time there. I ended up being a recruiter there for all these designers and developers that I'd been working for in a previous life as a project manager. I started being a recruiter. And then once I'd sort of finished dancing with that devil, I came home and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to radio school, of all things. And I realized that at age 33, that just wasn't going to be like a lucrative profession for me. Not that money is everything. You probably already have got a sense that joy in people is a huge part of like what gets me out of bed in the morning. And so I actually ended up right back where I started straight out of uni. I was a receptionist. And I was sitting on the reception at the radio school, and this dude walked by and he was like, Priya Bana, what are you doing here? And I was like, you know what? I'm not really applying myself. I need to figure this out. He was like, come and join this little company called PaperKite. We specialize in making mobile apps. We've got this beautiful team, but we need someone to kind of act like the glue and keep us together. And so that is how I started being the community manager at PaperKite. And from there, it's now been 5 years. I'm the director of people and culture there. I've seen our culture evolve, and it was already beautiful when I first started, and it's become an even more beautiful thing. And I'm so proud of that, Mahi, and I'm so proud we've recently won some awards about our culture and how we look after people and their well-being. And so that's how I fell into it. I don't have any HR quals. I don't, I just learned this stuff all on the job, and I've just, I guess my training ground has been these creative businesses that I've worked in and all these creatives that I've helped work alongside. And that's how I've kind of learned about this people and culture shtick.
Nice.
Wow.
So basically learning as you do. One of the things that kind of, I guess, I thought of while you were talking right now about culture. When you were there, it was great. And then I guess what it is right now, even better. That culture changed through the time.
Mm.
How did that look? What changed? What did you do? What did you learn? And I guess when we talk about what did you learn, what I guess if you can talk about something that went wrong, if you're open to it, and I guess what you learned from that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the first thing I learned, and I learned this before PaperKite, but just don't be a dick to people. You be kind and leave a good impression. It, like, might secure you not only a career but like maybe your purpose in life. And so I'm really grateful that when I was a project manager and an account manager, when the dude who walked past, his name's Mountain, when Mountain walked past and he remembered me from back in the day, it's because I'd left a good impression. And that impression has now seen this beautiful career in people and culture take shape. So that's the first thing that I learned. But in terms of culture, I mean, gosh, I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with culture and how it's created, how it permeates, how it evolves. And I think, like, for me, AJ, I think a lot of it has to do with being deliberate and about creating moments that matter and deliberately charging people to be ambassadors and role models and executors of that culture. I also believe that culture changes with time and with people. Like when I first started at PaperKite, they were on this real precipice of change. They just run a piece of research work with a consulting company where they asked all of the staff what it really felt like to work there. Um, and the results really surprised management at that time. To put it really frankly, it just felt a bit like a boys' club. I
Mm.
recently read in an exit interview from someone who had been at PaperKite for years and referred to like the good old days of PaperKite being a frat house that made software. But I'm throwing no shade on that. There was a time here in Wellington where
Yeah.
heaps of digital and creative agencies worked hard and played hard, and I've been a part of that and partied hard with those teams till all hours, till all days of the week. But it was definitely an age and stage of not only my life, but that age and stage of the organisations as well. But now, 5 years later, Papercut's culture is super different. I've seen it evolve through time, along with the people who have come and gone, with different leadership structures, with the investment that the business has been able to make in community and individuals and their experiences of the workplace. Um, and so I'll say that it's been a really long time at Papercoat where like we've even really ordered much booze in. PK is more like soy milk and kombucha than shots and beer pong now. And in terms of boys club, like I am the example here. First Wahine of colour to join senior leadership team for 14 years and in their 14-year history, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm so proud that we've just got so much diversity at PaperKite. Um, and again, not to throw shade, our industry is full of technologists that just happen to be dudes, right?
Mm.
It doesn't mean to say that can't change or isn't changing. I'm just kind of painting a picture of what was at this very small company, started by Nick, a dude, and then brought his friends on as you do, and how it's evolved. So for me, culture is more than how the team behaves at Friday Drinks. It's in what you're there to do, how you translate that to your team, how that comes across to clients and impacts the work. Culture is that sort of invisible but like super present binding agent that wraps around your team. Like I'd say that Papercoat right now has a real culture of gratitude, of giving
Mm.
thanks, of care, of well-being. We really practice that people first mantra. Um, and I would like, for me, AJ, like a big top tip, like a clue, is if you think about like if you want a clue for what your culture is, think about
Mm.
what you're giving thanks for. So like when you think about what you're thanking your people for at work and how frequently that thanks is happening, it offers a huge clue about your culture. So like if you're constantly thanking people for pulling like overtime or late nights,
Mm.
that's really representative of your culture. But if your
Yep.
team is expressing gratitude to each other for like peer coding or collaborating on a document or delivering a tricky feature together, or like the homemade cheesecake that was brought in to welcome someone back from leave, like that's your culture speaking. And of course, if you're not giving any thanks at all, that says a lot about your culture too. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's a thing I love. to think about and that I'm obsessed with thinking about is what is culture and how do you make cultures. And the other thing is you can't lift and shift. You can't just take a culture that exists over here and like plonk it
Yeah.
into another company. You got to figure out what your people need to do their most meaningful work, what your values are, and you think about your leadership structure and the people that you hire. And I know we're going to talk about it, or I hope we're going to talk about it a little bit later, AJ, but values comes as a huge part of it, of the culture piece.
Actually made me think a bit about our own culture as well. We give a lot of thanks, I guess, for output. Input, again, just simplifying it. Not so much, actually,
Mm.
which is interesting, and that's something we probably got to work on because it's the input, it's what's done together, and then of course the other things not associated with, but just being human that also gets you to that output. But yeah, no, very very insightful and really good tip as well. One question that I have though is that you went from a culture of drinking a lot on Friday, then to coffee in the morning. It sounds like like you're serious type of people, if that's a way to describe it. How did that transition come about, and why did it come about?
Do you mean expressly the transition from like how you have a culture where you play hard and work hard and play hard to one that wasn't so much that anymore? Is that the question?
Yeah, and maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's you guys are still playing hard. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a transition.
So I think that actually, for a really long time, PaperKite had a startup culture and a startup group of people. And that group of people, there was only a few of them, a handful of people, maybe five, six, seven, eight. And they were all also in a particular age and stage of their life. And when Nick started the business, he was single. He did it out the back of his bedroom, moved into an office, hired good people that he wanted to surround himself with, a lot of young people as well. So no one had like kids and partners. Everyone was able to work crazy hours to make beautiful things happen. And for that mahi, they won amazing projects and built a real reputation. And so that worked for them at that time. And then as they grew bigger and needed more admin and infrastructure and real people practice and all of that kind of stuff, as any business does, you also have to grow up. And I think,
Mm,
what happens is you kind of, you take your toddler pants off and you put your big boy pants on. And I think a lot of that also is about behavior change and what you expect from people. That doesn't mean to say that you can't celebrate. It doesn't mean to say that you can't have
mm,
fun. And certainly, paper kite. I've seen lots of I've seen lots of ways that paper kite have had fun over the years. It does. You don't have to have an extreme drinking culture, or even a small drinking culture to have fun. But what I have noticed is as people grew older, as people grew more experienced, as people really realized that they wanted to hone their craft and figure out what they wanted to come to work to do.
mm,
You definitely have phases where people come to work for the people that they're working with. Some people come to work to like grow in their craft and make cool shit, make meaningful stuff for people. I think all of those things are really real, and the business sort of grows up. And I think, yeah, we definitely still have a beer pong table. We still have all these kinds of bits and pieces that like kind of hark to the past. But definitely, I think the biggest change is just people and what they want. I also reckon, AJ, a huge part of that piece is COVID. I think
mm,
working from home and the lockdowns have really showed us all what was important in our life. And actually, you'll see a lot of paper cutters who have side hustles, who really want to make sure that exercise and mental health and well-being, hanging out, with their whānau is so much more important than
yeah.
taking back for a bender with their work colleagues. That doesn't mean to say that we don't absolutely kill at karaoke. We still do that. It's just a way less frequent than it used to be, and that's okay. There was a time and place for it, and no hate, just love, and just like any business, you'll see the evolution, I think.
Since we spoke about, I guess, COVID, one question I like to always ask is culture during when you're in a remote environment. I mean, how did you guys adapt to that? Do you guys still continue some of
Mm.
the things that worked really well from then? What worked really badly? that maybe in hindsight, if you did it in a certain way, you think it could work well?
Totally. It's such, when I think back to lockdown, man, I was a different human then. PaperKite was really different then. We, just prior to lockdown, everyone still worked from the office 9 till 5, 5 days a week, all of us. We didn't have any remote or hybrid workers. We all just worked in the office from our Wellington HQ. When the lockdowns, and we just moved into this beautiful big office overlooking Courtney Place, like amazing big meeting rooms, huge engine room, open plan, like it's beautiful. It still is beautiful. And then the lockdowns happened, and the office, like gathered dust. And I started thinking that it was time for me to dust off my CV. My job was to look after the community in that space. So when you take the space away, you're like, what's left? Basically what I found is, what we found as a business is that we needed more points of connection than ever before as a business. And so I used to jump on calls, whole company calls, at the start of every week and at the end of every week, and just try and bring the teams together and connect them in fun and important ways. So we shared all sorts of things during lockdown, hacks, games. We shared more about ourselves and our families than we ever did before. And actually, lots of people had lots of well-being issues over lockdown. And so every single day, I would just go on walking meetings around my block, socially, safely distanced from people, talking to papercutters on the phone and just making them know and feel that they weren't alone, even though it was such a solitary experience, the lockdowns. So then we come back, and there was change. There was a lot of personnel change at PaperKite, but we really heard our people when they said that they still wanted to embrace that flexibility, that balance that they did actually achieve when they were working from home. So now it's a very different PaperKite. We have people who come and work in the office 5 days a week. We have people that work 2 or 3 days from our office. We have people that are entirely based in different areas around Aotearoa. People work completely flexibly these days. We have some core hours that we really want to encourage people to be able to be online and collaborate and use those times to collaborate with. But I work around my 2-year-old. We have lots of people that have flexible arrangements now. So I think the ways we work shifted with COVID, and what we want from our employers, what we want from our team, and what we want from our life has really has changed. And I think people are more fulfilled. I reckon that people work harder because they know that they're able to get to have all parts of them fed by choosing their own hours and by choosing how they want to work.
I totally agree with that one. In fact, Arwen, we were both talking about this. I think it was 3 months ago. So what we have in Piqua is a come to work when you want policy.
Oh wow!
And that means come to the office whenever you want. Of course, we have pre-agreed timings to talk. We do want to meet at least once a week. Alan was telling me about your cost savings with your petrol, the ability to actually live your life properly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's such a good way to approach work, especially if you go to the gym after work hours, the gym's usually packed. And when I was working at a previous job, I didn't have that flexibility to actually work at any time that I wanted to, and then go to the gym after work hours. The gym is packed. You can't really have that time to really use the equipment, and then more time of your day gets spent. But here at Piqua, in the morning I can go to the gym, get the workout in, and then go back to work, get everything done that I need to remotely, and then meet with AJ at a good time that works for both of us. It's just really good EVP, I would say.
And Alan, I bet because you've done your workout when you needed to do it, you were better set up to have those meetings at work when you have them. Like, I think the other part of what we've learned is that people just have different styles, man. Like, I know I do my best mahi at nighttime. That doesn't work for our team, but it means that I can work on things like policies and all of that kind of stuff at nighttime after my kids gone to bed and I've got my own space, my own
Yeah.
time. And I think we are getting the best out of people if you can. And I also heard you say, I think it is important to come back and have connection.
Yeah.
I personally am not a huge advocate for forcing everybody back into the office. I don't think that you're going to get the best out of people that way. But certainly, I do want to shout out that PaperKite has an anchor day. Even though we've got people that are all around the motu, we still encourage everyone to be in the office on a Friday and have your screens on as well if you're working remotely for us. And the one thing that we did is we designed our Fridays to be full of activities and team events, and try and make it so that is our real connection day. And so that's why that one day is sort of in place to do that. I think if you can really listen to your people and co-design a work week that works for them for the most, then and then meet individuals on a case-by-case basis, I think it will really do wonders for what you make and your outputs as a business.
Yeah.
And one thing as well is that me and Neer's another operations manager, not another, he's operations manager, we're loud and vocal about these things in the sense that, like, I will go to the gym at 3 o'clock because that suits me. I like to have it in the middle of my day because that re-energizes me. And I just say, all right, you want to go at 3 p.m., go 3 p.m. You want to go at 10 a.m., you go at 10 a.m. And I guess the same rules just apply. Whatever rules apply for you as a director should apply to everyone else, is what I feel.
Preach.
Because we end up doing that. But we've also had scenarios of abuse, and I'm sure a lot of companies have had that too. How has PaperKite dealt with this?
Yeah. If you're asking about that, the trickier things, the trickier side to people and culture, yeah, it's a really interesting game to play, especially for me. I feel like because I was part of the team, the engine room, the shop floor, the doers, not that I'm not a doer anymore. I feel like the leaders eat last and we're often doing so much that we forget to eat. It's been really interesting to me going from being on, watching the senior leadership team go into a room and close the door to now being in those meetings. I think that's a really fascinating part of the kind of employee journey. But yeah, definitely things can go wrong. And I've had some tricky situations to deal with. So I'm more than happy to share some stories from the HR frontline if that's something.
Let's do it. Let's please do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like I said, it's super fascinating. So particularly, I think when you're in a business where there's no one person assigned to be HR, or I think HR is a bit of a dirty acronym, or initials. I think people and culture is where we want to be. But if you are a team of one that has to deal with the inevitable challenges that come up with when you put a group of humans together, different humans together. So I've had definitely my fair share of interesting, fun, awkward situations that I've needed to help support or learn from in the workplace. Haven't always got it right, so I'm happy to share my experiences, random stories that come to mind from navigating this front line of people and culture. I've got a couple here. One of them is like when two people just butt heads, like every single place I've worked, this happens. It sucks when it happens between a lead and someone that works under them, because you've got to ensure the two people can have like a productive working relationship, which can be tricky. Yeah. My top tip here is that you got to have tissues at the ready. Like you always got to have tissues at the ready. There's always tears. But you got to have, and ideally a company card that can pay for some coffees so that people can like have your shoulder to cry on or bend your ear or bounce situations off. The real resolution here is actually to have a really strong psychosocial safety in the workplace. Figure out how you can build trust, build rapport, build connection between teammates. And that stuff, if you've built it right, that makes for the foundational elements of people being able to give feedback and receive it, and from and to a constructive place. I think that's the only way that you're going to be able to get through it. If you don't have trust between colleagues, if you don't have any connection or build any rapport, that when stuff does get tricky, and people do touch on each other's nerves, it makes it all the more harder to get back to a productive place from them. So investing in moments where people can connect and learn more about each other from a human level actually works from a business level, because it means that when you do have conflict, it's healthy challenge. It's not going to be mana reducing conversations. It's going to be mana enhancing conversations. That's one of my tricky ones, I think. When leadership are trying to be good humans, but it doesn't come off, that's a big one. So a couple of things come to mind here. Like, one example for me is we had a leader paying out of their own pocket for a team member to attend a conference. They bought the team member a conference ticket so that the team member could attend with their colleagues, because at that time the business could only afford to send a certain number of people to a conference. And this leader meant really well. Like, honestly, if they'd just not told anyone and just did it, no one would have been any wiser. And it would have been a nice thing to have done, and the team member would have had a lovely time. End of story. But in this case, the team member was told and then felt really awkward, and they felt obligated, as if they needed to give thanks to that lead who they didn't actually ask for this act of kindness or goodwill, or maybe even charity to go to them. It was awkward. It was well-intentioned, but it was still awkward. And again, it was resolved with the two people just having an open conversation about the intent, but also how it felt. And I think being able to have that open dialogue, they were able to move on. But I think stuff like that happens all the time. Another example is when you have a workplace where you invite people to bring as much of their whole selves to work as they wish, and you haven't imposed any boundaries on or restrictions on what that can look like, because actually imposing a boundary is actually icky in of itself. It can lead that can lead to harm. But the things that come to mind are like people bringing their politics into the workplace or their religion into the workplace, or like, say, for example, I heard recently when they had like a public vote on something that really surfaces people's views, their personal views around something at the lunch table or at Friday drinks, which might come across as offensive or ignorant, right? So there's this line that can be really hard to define, but you might need them to set boundaries. Like, I know one company, they've got a safe word. So like any topic that strikes a nerve with anyone gets shut down if you, like, no questions asked. If anyone like utters the word like rock melon, then whatever that topic is just shuts down. And no questions asked, but clearly it's just struck a nerve somewhere, and instead of it becoming a big thing in the workplace. But I think, those are two examples of when, I think leadership are trying to be good humans, but it doesn't quite come off in the workplace. I've got a couple more.
Keep them coming.
When office pals become more than just friends. So super, super close to me, as my baby daddy was previously my manager in the workplace, and then my colleague on senior leadership, at a senior leadership level. And there's just no two ways about it. It's bloody awkward. And it can have real impacts on how you work with each other and the people around you. So that means it can have really serious business implications. I'm actually really proud of the fact that there's been at least 4 that I can think of, 4 successful long-term relationships that I know of that were born of like a colleagueship at PaperKite. It really says something about our culture that people felt such a strong connection with the humans we hired and we put together that they've fallen in love. I think that's awesome, but it also means that it can be something that needs to be managed. Unlike some places I've heard of, like, we don't have a policy on this. No one needs to come and disclose to me that they're dating a coworker or to senior leadership team. But other than it being really obvious, colleagues have enrolled me in their personal lives just because they wanted to. And I think that lead and team member bit is very tricky. I think with lots of authority, decision-making, and the kind of information that your lead is privy to, I think having a relationship with that can make that really difficult. Fortunately, I've not really come across that too much in my time. Rather, the relationships that I've seen happen in the workplace are people at the same level and usually in different areas of the business, which makes it a little bit easier. But I have seen it have impacts on other people around them. And I have seen people at the start of their falling in love journey doing all those lovely things for each other in the workplace. But I've also seen when arguments between a couple can come to work. and really like impact other people that work around them. So being being able to pull each person aside and just have an open corridor about it and making them aware of the optics and they're aware of their impact on others is really helpful. I think ultimately nobody wants to make another human feel awkward or uncomfortable or worried, right? And so I think just drawing people's attention to that. But I definitely think you can successfully navigate relationships in the workplace if you've got a workplace that is really open and honest and has a little bit of vulnerability and also able to have some of those trickier corridors. And then the last one I think is really difficult is in terms of stories from the front line is when life starts merging with work life. So a good example of this is how like is the word divisive? Yeah, divisive. Dogs and the workplace can be. You know, some people call their dogs their fur babies.
Right.
Some people are like nonchalant. Some actually have got past trauma and phobias. Some people have allergies, right? So while some people might think they're bringing their like furry companion into the workplace, and I'm not talking about service dogs here. Service dogs are like, you know, there's a service that they're providing. It can be really tricky. We've come to a great compromise with that at PaperKite, and we've got a policy. It's a 3 strike or 3 barks policy, and you're out. Depending on the offence. But you know, again, someone with health or wellbeing issues around dogs trumps that person being able to bring their dog in. I think those kinds of things, as an HR person, those kinds of things are always tricky. Like, I really want to do this thing, and I think it would be really fun. Versus, I don't know if it's going to be fun for everyone. You know,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing is some of the stuff that we have to deal with all the time on the front line of people and culture.
One thing, because I think we've dealt with a romantic relationship. Yeah, this is about 4 years ago. Not the best, in the sense we just didn't know what to do because at that point they were romanticizing in the workplace. And our employment agreement at the time indicated you can't do stuff like that. So we had to let them go. That was what we had to do. If you were put in a situation like that, what would you do differently, or would you follow the same?
Yeah, I think it depends on the intricacies of it. I remember there was one example where it was such a small little thing, but it had a huge impact, which was 2 people in a relationship in the workplace. One person was in a meeting with a group of staff members, other team members, and their partner / colleague knocked on the door of the meeting room and handed them a coffee. It's like such a small, unassuming, actually lovely gesture to pass someone you care about a cup of coffee, right? Whatever. But it completely disrupted the vibe, the tone, even just the train of thought that was going on in that room. And so there's a small little example of where when you have romance in the workplace, there are bigger implications sometimes. And also how you make others feel on even at Friday drinks, where you've got 2 people and you might share your confidences with one of them, and you don't really want those confidences to be shared, you know, at home, you know, and so I think there's lots of tricky things like that. I think you gotta trust that the people that you've hired, regardless of workplace relationships or not, have got the business's best interest at heart, their colleagues' best interest at heart. And if they exhibit any behaviours that are going to compromise that, and it's really starting to impact the work and the reason why people are at work and what they come to do at work, that's when I think you start having kind of more serious conversations. So, and of course, you know, there's lots of places where you can show that you love someone. It does not have to be within 5 in the workplace. And so I think it's completely cool to have that conversation, you know?
And like the way I see it is, you're in a workplace to, of course, get the work done, and the business should be your best interests if you are obviously working for that particular company. And like there's a time and place for being romantic. Of course, the subtle things here and there are nice. Like, say, for example, if I were to do the coffee thing, I'd probably do it in the dealer, like maybe if they're just sitting at a desk or something, like here you go. But yeah, disrupting a meeting and going in, and yeah, I see where you're coming from. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think when we were talking about navigating romantic relationships, in my head, I thought we were going to talk about something real cracked.
Yeah, like, and the thing is as well is like I cannot throw stones, you know, as a senior leader of an organization that's still there, you know, like 5 years on, you know, it's definitely not like do as I say, because you know it is do as I do, you know. And so I was super aware that I was a role model in that, and I think that's why I say like I have no qualms about people falling for each other in the workplace,
Yep.
crushing in each other in the workplace. That happens, especially when you hire dope people. Dope people are gonna, you know, align themselves with other dope people. So I think that all that stuff's really natural. I guess it's just about how those behaviors end up
Yeah.
rolling out. Yeah.
It's really cool that you have had that experience though, because you could relate to some people that might actually start having a crush on someone at the workplace, and then come to you for some advice maybe. And how do you do this the right way? Have you ever had an event like that where someone asked you for advice?
Yeah, I've seen it all. I've seen just Friday night hookups and the awkwardness of coming into work, you know, the following week,
Right.
the following month, the following years. I've seen the awkwardness of you know, unrequited crushes where someone, you know, or like when you get a contractor on board and they're only there for 6 weeks and you can tell that like they're gonna leave, they're gonna
Yep.
leave. So I think again, one of my most, I'm so proud that I started my career in people and culture almost as, you know, one of the team. And so that when I moved into leadership, of course, that means that I have a particular kind of hat that I wear at PaperKite, but I certainly still can speak just at a human level about what it means to have feelings for someone, and when those feelings are unrequited or when those feelings might be bigger. And definitely have had some surprises as well. Some things that I was like, oh, I did not see those two getting together and that coming. But then also I've seen some things that I'm like, gosh, that makes so much sense. That's a power couple like that. Yeah. So I definitely am very proud that I'm a plate because of my experience. And also I think, Alwyn, you touched on a really good point, as a leader, if you can be vulnerable and if you can be open about your experiences, and if you're happy to share a little bit part of yourself, people feel comfortable coming to you about the trickiest things and about the easiest things. So I think that's one way I lead, is to show that vulnerability and to let people in. Certainly everybody at PaperKite knows that. You know, I've made no I always joke that probably the best recruitment strategy I could have ever put in place is to have my baby. It means that I've got like a pure blood paper cutter that's going to, like, you know, overtake us all one day.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you just have to be human about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That the correlation might be kind of weird, but it just got me thinking of a Skux, a guy who just can get any girl he wants, and then the opposite, a girl that can get any guy he wants. So she wants. At the moment, if we talk about recruitment, talent acquisition, it's relatively easier for companies to get talent now in comparison to the past 2 years or 3 years. I've been noticing a lot of companies slacking off with their onboarding and even sometimes their candidate experience too, because they know they can right now. Long term, that's probably going to be an issue. But, you know, in terms of, I guess, candidate experience and then also onboarding, what have you seen go totally wrong, and why is it wrong? And, you know, what do you think other companies out there could do to make sure they don't touch their territory?
Yeah, man, I'm smiling, but nothing pisses me off more than when I hear about shitty onboarding experiences. Does my head in, because you're messing around with people's very initial first impressions of a business. Like, don't fuck that up. Like, they're just starting with you, you know, they're getting a real understanding of your reputation. So it drives me nuts. Like, I've heard heard really terrible stories. I've heard stories like people not knowing even what floor to go to when they arrive at the building for their first day, no one being there to greet them, no one even knowing that this is their first day, not having an access card, not having their workstation set up, no equipment on their, not only for their first day but their first weeks. Like people are still like actually on the payroll and they can't even start their mahi. And then worse than onboarding experiences, this kind of idea that there are people who sit at a desk just a stone's throw from your desk and every single day, and you don't even know each other's names. Like that shit is incomprehensible to me. And obviously, not on my watch. Like I personally, I'm super, super proud of the energy and the effort and the impact that PaperKite's onboarding has. Like I think you can get heaps of the onboarding process right actually ahead of when you've hired them, like during the actual interview and during the initial engagement with people, when you're like, yeah, I've just read your CV, like come on in. Every single thing is building an impression, so start that really early on. So PK, we've got a three-pronged interview series. So we have an initial coffee chat, and that's real low key. It's like, here's the job, here's what we're looking for. Does that sound like a bit of you? What are you looking for? If we feel like there's synergy there, I fucking hate that word. If we feel like that there's a real connection there, and there's an understanding of what of maybe this could go somewhere further, we invite people to a culture ad interview, and then finally a technical challenge, which is paired with a follow-up technical interview. And so what I love about that is, even though that feels like it could be really long, it means that actually as a candidate, you're exposed to meeting at least 5 different paper kiters. So if you meet a whole bunch of paper kiters that are across disciplines, that means that like those 5 people are getting a feel for the person, but also the candidate is getting a good feel for who we are, what we're about. It also means that all of those paper kiters are listening for value alignment and whether the candidate has the chops to do the job. And then obviously, so you've gone through all those hurdles, you've proven that you've got the skills, the capability, and the attitude and the value alignment. Once you're hired at PaperKite, a few days before they start, they get emailed a photo of their fully set up workstation and a personalized welcome guide. They also receive a bunch of information about what to expect on their first day, including who will meet them at the door, the plan for the day, the fact that lunch that day is on us. We design that first day so people have the time and space to meet as many of the team as possible and complete their paperwork. Just get really familiar with their surroundings before and have like a chill start to their work life at PaperKite. And to do that, we actually start new people on a Friday, and so that they can ease into it and come back fresh on a Monday, having hung out with PaperKiters on an anchor day. And there's no awkwardness on a Monday because they've already like done that awkward thing on the Friday, right? And so I guess you could say that like each new paper kiter is assured that we've really thought about them even before they've stepped in the door. We also have this long-standing newbie tradition called RUPK. There's a lot of acronyms at PaperKite. RUPK, and this ceremony takes place at the end of your first Friday, and it sets a real tone for our culture. So it's a chance for like new recruits to get to know the people they'll be working alongside and share a bit about themselves. It's a silly quiz, but there's heaps of banter. It lets a new paper kiter know that they've arrived somewhere that they're safe to bring as much of themselves as they want, and they can use that time, that RUPK ceremony, to test what that looks and feels like for them. So you can definitely see the people who are maybe a little more introverted and so they don't want to share so much. You can see the people that are a bit extroverted. But during the RUPK, like we learn so much stuff about people's first concerts they went to, people's jobs that they've had before this, people's side hustles, people's party tricks. And so you're already breaking down the barriers. You're already forming connection from day one. So guess what? On day 55, when you have an incident with when you have a shitty conversation with a colleague, you're like, hang on, I know that your first concert that you ever went to was Michael Jackson. That was my very first CD I ever bought. We are going to find a way through this because, we're good people, So I think all of that stuff is really helpful. My goal, right, is like for people to have epic, like I want people's experience of their first day to feel as good as their experience on the last day. So make sure that people feel seen and heard, and that you're walking out the door, and how people talk about you and their experiences of onboarding from woe to go. That says a lot about your reputation. So like, treat people well, actually give a shit about those moments.
It's true. It's true. One other thing I picked up here is learning and understanding all that. I see it as being able to actually work with someone a whole lot more easier, in the sense that, like, okay, you probably like your things managed this way. You probably might want to work on this kind of task. Maybe, for example, working with this type of tech might not be your cup of tea because of XYZ, or how you sometimes just also just give out news as well. That also helps a lot too. But I guess, like, one other thing that I caught on was culture add, which is one of your rounds, as opposed to culture fit that we hear a lot of. I guess the difference makes sense, but please explain it.
Absolutely. So, like, it's such, yeah. So what you don't want to do, because what makes for good people, right? But like, if you looked at your group of friends, no one of them will be the same, right? But there will be an undercurrent that brings you all together. That's that good people thing, right? So everyone's really different, but together you've got a shared understanding of what you all need from each other as a friendship group. I think that's the same as when you're hiring, but I think that undercurrents actually is values. And so what you want to do, I'll quickly answer your question, and then I'd love to go into a values piece. But I think the quick answer the answer to your I think the answer to your question is, now let me see if I can quickly get this. You don't want to hire cookie cutter people. You don't want to hire the same every time. You want to hire, we call it a culture add, because you want people to add to your culture, add something different than the previous people. And I think with that little bit of addition, if you add all those little things up that people can bring, new people can bring, that's going to watch your culture evolve as well. So yeah. I think that's the biggest piece, I think, that answers that question, is why it's an add and not a fit. Fit means the same. Fit means we know exactly what we're looking for, and it's this, and it looks like this. But actually, you need people that look different. You need people who've got different experiences. That's what's going to give you diversity of thought. That diversity is going to add to the solutions that you make for your clients. It's going to make for better outcomes. And guess what? It's going to probably make for a doper, cooler, nicer, kinder, vulnerable, talented, clever, inspiring workplace. So that's kind of the short answer. But like, I have spent a bunch of time thinking about values and how important they are to your recruitment. So where I kind of landed is that Nick, when he started PaperKite, he had culture at its heart back in 2010. And as the team evolved over the years, it was Nick who was still the living representation of PaperKite's values. But as we continued to grow, right, we knew that we needed to systemize parts of our culture so that the team had a defined sense of purpose beyond just one individual. We needed a way for everyone to sing from the same song sheet. And so that's how we came to start thinking about having core company values. And how we did that is we actually ran a series of exercises to reveal any themes. So team members were asked to reflect on the most successful PaperKite employees, both past and present. Like, what were the traits that made that person such an A player for PaperKite? Was it the way they interacted with clients, or their ability to handle pressure? Or was it the way they approached a tricky conversation that needed to be had? And from there, we developed a list of traits, and they form the foundation of what are now PaperKite's values. And the thing about values is that we knew that in order for them to be accepted and embedded and lived, it was based on one critical factor, and that's that they weren't created by one person. They were derived from input from everyone from the very beginning. And then we just started, we went about embedding those 5 values in day-to-day PaperKite life. They're a huge part of our recruitment process. So we speak to them in our job descriptions and our job listings. We design questions in our interview process that speaks to our values. And so by doing that, right, we're listening for value alignment, and we're attracting and we're hiring value aligned people. And so, and then they come through our performance reviews, they come through how we give and receive feedback, they frame a lot of stuff for us. So PaperKite's key values are embrace our collective genius. So like, work with each other as a team, champion the end user, like think about who the end user is that you're designing for,
Yeah.
find the why. Don't just go like, yep, okay, I'll do it. Ask, if you don't believe in something, find the why. Ask why you're doing it that way, why we have to do it that way, or why we can't do it a different way. Tell the kind truth. So tell the kind truth is a short version. Actually, the original value is tell the kind truth and don't be a dick about it. So that's, I think,
Mm.
really important. And always be more better. It's like paper kite language. Always be more better. Like, is this the best we can do? I think we can be a bit more better. So that is our 5 key values. So we're listening out for value alignment. We're listening out in interviews for people that speak to those things. And not everybody's version of find the why is going to be the same. That's exactly what we want as well. That would be culture fit. We want culture add. So yeah, we can see diversity even in the answers for those value, even in the answers to those value aligned questions.
Do you find it a bit difficult? I'm not throwing shade to a particular country, but I guess a lot of Indian engineers, when I say a lot, I'd probably say 60 to 70%, because majority of the companies there are agencies. But the way that agencies are run over there versus here is that they operate as if it's a ticket-based system, in the sense that, like, okay, here you go, here are 15 stories. Don't ask why you're doing them. Go get it done in the quickest way possible. Versus Western countries, where we're a bit more like, okay, well, this is what the story is. This is why it's there. It has a group discussion of why we are architecting it like this, etc., etc. When have you ever hired anyone that has come from that background and kind of worked with them to change that mindset?
Absolutely. I actually think that we've hired someone. I can think of one instance where I feel like someone showed a level of technical ability in their interviews that they could not show once they were hired. And so I absolutely think that there are like some issues with issuing tech tests and things like that. But I think that the way that we've set up our 3-pronged interview process, and having loads of different paper cutters go in and interview the person, I think that stuff naturally comes out. And I just really wanted to make sure that I said this, that I might be, you might get something from what I'm saying around needing to be really articulate and being able to eloquently explain yourself and explain your why. That is not true. We actually have a lot of paper kiters where English isn't their first language, and and perhaps they're not well versed in kind of, I guess, the more qualitative answers that people are looking for in interviews. I don't think that is I do not think that it's a disadvantage. You do need to be able to explain why you took a certain approach. So I think for me, to answer that question, it's like, if we give you a tech challenge, we're not looking for the right answer. We're not looking for a result. What we want to know is the problem-solving methodology you use and approach, and the questions you asked yourself, and the questions you would ask others, and how you would work with others. You need to be able to demonstrate that stuff, that you're not going to just sit in the corner with your headphones on and nobody's going to talk to you, and you reckon that you can get all this shit done by yourself.
Yeah.
That's not what we're looking for. And so I think the way that you can design questions to bring out not only the answers in people, but how they got to those answers, that's going to make sure that you don't get the situation that you described.
Strong point you put out there. A very, very strong point. Because, like you mentioned, a lot of the engineers out there, or even just people out there, English isn't their first language; it's their second language. And again, it might be hard to articulate certain things because for that reason, or maybe you're just not used to speaking with a lot of people in English. But it doesn't mean you can't get your point across. It might be a little harder initially to understand it, but then over time, like you said this to me the first time we spoke, because we were talking about another podcast where English was a strong requirement. And that's fine. If that's how they need to run their team and that's how they see the team do the best, I totally go, right, you know what's best for you. But I also understood when you said, well, who else is going to accept them and then improve them? Because it does in reality only take a year max to improve your English. I've seen it firsthand, multiple times. And taking that punt on someone, I think, is one, super valuable because we do have a shortage in the country for a lot of skilled type of stuff. But then also it's just good for the person too. Like, why should they go home thinking that the only reason why they can't get this job is because their comms are bad? Technically, they might just be right there. And sometimes I've seen some people who are strong technically, but relatively weak with their comms go and do jobs that are not in their area of expertise and not something they want to do. And that's probably the most heartbreaking up there.
I completely agree, and I think a couple of things that come to mind as well in response to that is at this moment in time, PaperKite hires exclusively within Aotearoa, so you have to be like a resident or have the visa to be able to be in this country to work for PaperKite. And if you've switched up your whole life and you've said goodbye to your family and your background and everything to come in and start a new life here in New Zealand, it is absolutely like our obligation to welcome you with open arms and help you with your English, with connecting you to different communities, all of that kind of stuff. I think we've got an obligation there. And I also think like we just have a wealth of experiences and backgrounds that we can share, even if you can't articulate yourself in a way that is unlike other people. You still have value to add, and I think I agree. I've seen so many paper cutters be so shy or so quiet or so not able to articulate themselves very as well as they have been able to now, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later. And I will also say it kind of applies to interns as well. Like whenever you get like a grad or an intern, they are so excited and fresh and quiet, and they want to learn. And we've had interns go all the way up to senior management positions at PaperKite, and I've been so proud of that. Right, everyone has to start somewhere. It's whether you give people that opportunity to do it, and you know, people will surprise you, and also, man, just be open to what you can learn from them, even if they don't sound like you or look like you. I'm sure that what they'll be able to do for you is make sure that whatever solution it is that you're hawking in the market is going to be a better one for that diversity.
I totally agree. Fun fact, the third patent that I worked on, it just got approved in the US. It was with, thank you, it was with Deep Shah. So Deep Shah is an AI engineer who lives in London. His comms at the time when I was working with him were really, 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 really bad in terms of English. Yet it was his expertise that actually brought the juice needed to get that patent through. And it's just something like, you know, learning from him, not just that, like culture too. Like the way that he thinks, the way that he does certain things. I think of Asian countries, I think people over there, they just know how to make the most out of the smallest amount of resources that they have. And then also the word isn't coming to me, but it's kind of when you're optimistic, the optimism is just some other level as well.
And they'll work bloody hard. We have these amazing, extraordinary cultures that we could learn from. We can share, you know, we can all share the best parts. You know, I feel like there are definitely people who are from different backgrounds and ethnicities who have actually learned to relax more and enjoy their work-life balance more from working here in New Zealand. And then I also think that we could take a little leaf out of the work ethic and you know, like the passion and the excitement for getting something quality over the line, even if it means that you have your dinner like, you know, a half an hour later, just get that shit done. Like I definitely think that there's give and take, and we can all be learning from each other's cultures and backgrounds for sure.
Totally agree. So 2025. So yesterday, the Reserve announced a rate cut, which was nice. And it looks like we're going to be going down over the next couple of months, and optimism might be there in the market. What are your predictions for 2025 as a recruiter and also as a people and culture manager?
Yeah, so far out. We're looking ahead at 2025. You've asked about 2025, AJ, but you got to look backwards, look forwards, and far out. It's been rough for a lot of companies, a lot of individuals, particularly in Wellington. Shout out to all the people that are, the market is flush and full at the moment, and that's really, really hard. So I think loads of companies have right-sized their organization and restructured their teams, and I think that an area that will suffer is that really, really important but non-revenue generating roles. So I think businesses will really need to think about how they're looking after people in that space going forward. If people are our biggest asset, we need to make sure we're retaining them, attracting them, looking after them. That's going to be key. So if you are getting rid of your roles in that people and culture, studio operations, those non-revenue generating roles, then as businesses, I think in 2025 and ongoing, we need to think about who is playing that part in these organizations to keep and look after our people. I think we talked a little bit about the value of them before, but I think sadly we've seen grad programs and businesses' ability to take on juniors and grads has lessened in favor of keeping senior subject matter expertise on. But by doing that, we're not getting that fresh perspective. And we're also, what we're doing is creating workforces that have hit sort of a ceiling, and there isn't a lot of succession planning that way. So we'll need to shift back a little bit and be able to give opportunities. Of course, where that's been difficult is if you're going to bring grads and foundation and junior staff members on, you need to have the senior expertise to look after them and foster them and mentor them. If you haven't got that ability, I think you need to find that ability. And so I think that will be a shift, hopefully back to having more, grad programs accepted back into the workplace. So I think, ultimately businesses need to think about continuing to invest in well-being and creating psychologically safe spaces for their people, figuring out how to structure their businesses to future-proof them, and think about that sort of top level of capability and whether businesses are really like senior heavy and whether there's enough diversity of thought, of background, of experiences there to keep producing innovative solutions. So how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it new? How do you keep it exciting? I think that those are all going to be the key challenges. Well, and then I think ultimately, in this next 12 months, people are going to want to stabilize. I think it's been rocky. Let's just have a nice, even boat, no one nauseous, no one seasick, just a nice, even ride to the shore. I think that's what people need and are looking for. And then hopefully we come back stronger and we can fuck shit up in the future, because right now it doesn't feel like that time. I think that time will come again.
Yeah. For, I guess, candidates that are looking for roles out there, what are your predictions for 2025 for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really tricky right now. I think there are a huge amount of talented, wonderful people in market, and there's just not enough great jobs going. I think also the other thing we've seen is we had this big shift where loads of candidates were commanding a lot of money, and now we've kind of gone back the other way a little bit. I think if you're a candidate, what you need to do is just keep holding on to hope. I think you need to be looking really carefully at job descriptions and asking questions that align with your values as well as a candidate. It's just as much an interview about the kind of place that that you'd be working for as much as they want you. You need to be asking yourself whether you should give your talent to them. I think that it's gonna. I hate to say it, but I think it is going to continue to be a little tricky for our juniors, for our grads. I hope that businesses are able to be able to invest in those juniors coming in, because I think that will be really valuable for down the track. Like, you might not immediately see those results, but I think down the track. And I think that we just need to all be a bit more T-shaped. I think people are going, can I do the same mahi as I did with 30 people at 20 people? Okay, well, what do those 20 people need to have? They need to be able to wear lots of hats. They need to be flexible. They need to be adaptable. They need to care They need to give a shit about what the mucky that they're doing, and they need to care about each other and wanting to create a workplace where no one wants to leave because you actually like working together. So I
Yep.
think, that would be my biggest piece of advice is what other is it strings to your bow can you add so that when you're going to interviews that you're showing that not only are you willing to look after the social media as well as be a designer, but also you're going to go to meetups and spread the good word about the
Yeah.
organization's name. I think those are kind of where people are looking at. That doesn't mean to say that you can't specialize. Just have some
Yep.
nice transferable skills and broaden your offer.
No, well said. Well said. Yeah, I feel very much the same. Although I think this time next year it would be cool to see whether I'm right about this or not. I think by this time next year the market's gonna have a crazy shift in the sense that I do think hiring is gonna go into its strength zone again, like growth zone. That's my prediction, because I feel that we're going to free fall with rates, enthusiasm, and just free money just being available. Hopefully not as free as it was in 2021. Is what I don't think will be that much, but I think will be 50% of that, which is pretty good. And my prediction is that companies now, yes, it's easier to find someone, but I do think later on it will be difficult, for sure, because there might be that. Because another stat for New Zealand right now is that immigration has dropped. We're also having a brain drain as well, and that's the reason why I have this prediction. Is that okay? Next year it's going to be a bit of a iffy, and then I also feel that we'll have a little section maybe towards the end of the next year or 2026 where it's stabilized, because I think people are going to come back from Australia. And my rationalization to it is because Australia's reacted too late to inflation. So whoever went overseas for a better life will probably come back because we're doing it better here now. But again, no crystal ball. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think as long as people still care about people and all of that, that's what my whole purpose and drive and passion is about. People and their stories and what we can learn from them. As long as people keep that central, I think it doesn't matter what happens to the market. You're still going to need people and good people. So be good and good things will happen to you. And and I just hope that we are breeding businesses for the future that keep that front of mind. Just give a shit about your people, treat them well, and they will do the same in return for you.
Totally agree. Build your people and they'll build you too, I guess. No, that's true. Priya, thank you so much for spending an hour and a half with me and Owen. It was a good chat.